Okay, so it's just me today. Ryan, I think Ryan. Wait, Ryan is here. Ryan, any black? So wait, Isra? Oh, I hear myself. Hold on. I need to stop this. Okay. So Ryan, but not Matt, have a chat. I'm very confused. Okay. So I think that we ended it last time, saying we're not going to meet or we're not going to do this this week because of Veterans Day. Yes, yes. Now it's all coming clear to me. I think Ryan said whatever Remembrance Day, I believe it is in Canada, and due to that, he's not going to be able to be here. He has other plans, and then I said, "Oh yeah, I'll do something as well." And then I forgot, and that thing I thought I was going to be doing, not going to be doing because my wife and daughter and my wife's mother have gone up to Port Townsend for the day, and I was like, well, what do I do now? So it's just me. You're quitting waiting after 30. No, you've been waiting for 30 minutes. Oh man, I suck. Yeah, so I had this scheduled for some reason it was I'm not sure what happened. It was scheduled for 1 p.m. Tuesday, 1 p.m. Tuesday Pacific time, and I think we always do it at 2 o'clock, and then and so that's why it didn't show up. All sorts of errors. So sorry if anyone's here. Let me know. Um, 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. It's 2 p.m. 2 p.m. Pacific. Oh, looks like bam, people showed up all of a sudden. Okay, so hey, I noticed I didn't have my pretty lights in the back. Hold on. Oh, you're gonna see my PJs. Ignore that. Yes, if I work from home, it means PJs all day. So how y'all doing? I started working on a an automation that I thought was pretty cool, and I think after I figured out that we're not doing this, uh, yeah, I figured well I'd come on anyway and talk about this automation. So here's the idea, and if you have any questions, pop up about anything, throw them in the chat. I'll be happy to answer them. But sometimes I'm walking along the road doing a walking the dog, or and there's spots of that walk that are disconnected. I have no Wi-Fi. Well, obviously no Wi-Fi, but I have no cell service as well, and so I can't like do a quick search online, or I can't record. I can't send a message to anyone. I can't. I can write stuff down, but I want. I always want to be able to take notes of something I see, and it's often easier to dictate that to my phone and have the text show up somewhere. And I've had this before where I dictate a message and it will just save it to a note with a date stamp. And that's I've been able to do for a long time. And I think I was, where do I put that to? I think I just put it straight to Obsidian in a new note from Shortcuts on the iPhone. But I wanted to be able to say something and then have it automatically go to different places depending on whether it's a thing that we need to buy at the grocery store, or things that I should look into buying from somewhere. I don't know where it comes from. Or what's the other one? Oh, recently it's been, ideas of things I want to 3D print. And then there's like everything else. And it would be great to be able to, just dictate my message in one place and have all four of those things automatically happen. Well, that's not going to happen on device. So I want to have that probably in N8N. But as I say, if I'm walking and I'm disconnected, then, well, that's not going to happen because I'm not going to be able to trigger a web service. From shortcuts, I can trigger any web service. That's easy enough. But not if I'm disconnected. And there's one walk that we often do with the dog, and especially my wife's mother, called Blakely Harbor. It's a very short walk. It's like a mile and a half loop. But in that area, as well as another part of Bainbridge, there's quite a few parts of Bainbridge where there's absolutely zero connection. Do you ever work with Android? No, I have touched an Android phone. I only know one person that has an Android. One person in my life that has Android. Pretty much everyone I know is all iPhone. So no, I don't know anything about what would the similar thing would be on Android. But so I wanted to be able to, trigger this dictation and then hand it off to a web service. But again, sometimes I'm offline. And then when I come back online, so I wanted to dictate and have that at least saved locally. And then as soon as I'm back online, the rest of the workflow starts up. And there's a lot of problems with that. So I found I've used a tool for a long time called DataJar on the iPhone, which is just a simple database. Uses CloudKit to synchronize from the phone to iCloud. But that DataJar has to be open on all places for the sync to actually happen. So that's not really any good. I wanted to do, just writing a file to iCloud on the phone, which you can totally do. But when the dictation or when the web service fails, when the web service works, I want that file to be deleted. And if it doesn't work, well, don't delete it and just keep it there until the sync can happen. So trying to delete the file in shortcuts turns out to be, it just doesn't work. I can't get a file to be deleted that I created earlier in that workflow. It just doesn't work. And it wasn't until I found Scriptable, which is another tool that I've used for a long, long time. In fact, by the same person that created DataJar. Scriptable basically lets you run any JavaScript on the phone, which is great. And so now I can have a scriptable script that runs at the beginning, says just write whatever I dictated to a file in iCloud. And at the end, if everything worked, delete that same file from iCloud. And so now I've got this file that's there, and if everything worked, then it disappears. Otherwise, it stays there. And then when I reconnect to the internet, to the world, it will automatically synchronize from my phone to the Mac and any other device that I have online. So then, now with shortcuts, one of the annoying things is that you can have automations that run at based on a time, or when your focus mode changes, or when the different things on your Mac happen. But the time-based automations are one time, 1 hour, a specific time of the day, one time, not every hour or every half hour, which is kind of annoying. So I found another tool called Shortly. Shorty. It's short something. Shortener? No, not shortener. Shortenelli. I don't know. That will allow me to do intervals. Now I can also do, a simple cron job, or launch D, and create a new thing that runs every X amount of time, 30 minutes, every 60 minutes. And that will totally work, but then if I need to change it, it means having to remember what to do. So I found this other tool called Shorty, whatever it's called, that will very easily let me choose a shortcut and run that every 30 minutes or every 15 minutes. And so that can look in that directory. Actually, now that I don't need that anymore. That was when I was doing it with DataJar. And I just realized I don't need that app anymore, so I don't need to buy it.
To 22 p.m.
Great, thank you. I don't need to get that. So I can just watch that directory for a new file, for a new MP4 file, which is the... No, not an MP4 file. Watch for a new text file that I write to that directory. And then if a new text file does show up, then trigger this workflow that hands it off to that web service. Now, the web service is just using N8N. And it's a webhook. So the webhook goes into N8N, and then it goes to a text classifier, which I'm using. I use Ollama Cloud most of the time because it's just super fast. And has all the benefits of Ollama locally, but faster. So I use that to classify the text that's that I dictated, and if it is about a 3D print, Ryan is not joining. I don't think. And so if it's a something for groceries, it goes to a grocery list. Something to buy elsewhere, it goes to this other list. And for 3D prints, it goes to another list. And for everything else, it goes to another document. And all of that works perfectly. The last little bit I need to do is tweaking the what happens when I come back online, which I kind of described. But so that's kind of the thing I've been playing around with. He mentioned that today is, I think it's Remembrance Day in Canada. It's Veterans Day here in the U.S. And we both agreed, now that I'm remembering it now, that we were not going to do anything today. And I forgot until I actually joined. Do I ever use on-device LLMs on the iPhone? I did a long time ago when, basically it was running a model that's way too big for the device, and, it would eat up the battery life, and, a day's worth of battery is gone in, 20 minutes. And so I never do that. Maybe it's better now. Have you used any on-device models on the phone? I just haven't done it. Not in a long time. So anyway, that's the workflow I was kind of building out, and so I'd like to start creating some videos about that process, because it uses like all the things that I love. Automation both on the phone and, well, actually 3 places. Automation on the phone, on the Mac, and in N8N up in the cloud, on my personal instance. And it's communicating back to the, what happens afterwards? There's something I do after everything's done. I use the Apollo app and Anything LLM app to install sometimes. is anything LLMs now on phones? I haven't. That is definitely a an app that is very opinionated, and for me, not in a positive way. Anything. Oh, so there is a mobile version. Oh, but it looks like is it an Android only? It says APK file, so I assume that's an Android thing. Oh, good. I'm glad the N8N tool for Karakeep is useful. I also use it for. Um, so I also have another thing that another automation that I use like almost every day. But there's enough details because my main sharing mechanism is YouTube. There are some things that you may or may not be able to do, and if I share them, it kind of goes against agreements. So I can't talk about it, which is really frustrating. It's like there's been at least 2 or 3 videos where I go through the entire script process on a video about this automation or a few different automations, and I get to the point where I'm about to film and I read it again and I read it again, and it's like, wait a second, I can't talk about this on this platform. So but there's a workflow I use that will automatically generate a note in Obsidian with a summary at the top based on the full transcript of the video, as well as kind of interesting quotes and interesting chapters within the video. And then I can below that section, which is useful, but below that section I can take my actual notes. And there's a plugin for Obsidian called, I think it's called Media Notes, and which is amazing, which allows me to, as I'm typing, press Control, JKL to pause or go backwards, go forwards, and then continue typing whatever note I want to say. And then I do all my notes, and then below that section, I've got a section where I basically called it flashcards, and I can there's a space repetition plugin for Obsidian, and so then I'll go through and kind of come up with interesting cards that help me remember it afterwards. And then every day I go through all the cards about past videos to try to hopefully remember more of what I've just watched. So I use that a lot. I just can't talk about the details. Started Discord. What's in your mind? What's this? Oh. But I use that a lot. And I used to dabble with Anki on my phone and Mac. I've completely removed that from all my systems now, opting instead for using spaced repetition in Obsidian, which is, as I say, pretty amazing. But the Karakeep automation, there's another tool I use sometimes for another one I use for what am I trying to say? So I have two things. Oh, that thing for saving videos. The key part there is actually if you. So I create a playlist called something like videos I want to take notes about. I think it's a little shorter than that, but anyway, I got that playlist. And normally when you create a playlist, you can either have it private or public. Public means everyone can see it. Private means no one can see it. But then there's also unlisted, which is kind of in the middle. It's public if you know the URL or the actual ID for it, not the name, but the GUID that represents that that resource. And so it's essentially, I mean, you can use it for automations. And a neat thing about that is any public resource on YouTube, whether it's a video or a playlist, you can hit an RSS feed, which gets automatically generated by YouTube on every actually on every channel and every playlist and every video, there is an RSS feed. And so now if you got some tool that reads RSS, like I use N8N in this case to look at that RSS feed every minute or so, and if there's a new one, then start this process. So all I have to do to add a video to my Obsidian notes is just add it to the playlist of Take Notes. And then it will go ahead and grab all, that workflow will grab all, use the YouTube API to find out what's on that playlist, grab each one of those videos, and it's running every minute or so, grab all of those videos and generate those notes. And at the end of the process, it deletes the video from the playlist. So normally the playlist is empty. For Karakeep, what I do is I like the video. If I like the video, then I have an N8N process that runs I think I have it set to every 5 minutes. I don't want it to too many times because each one of those calls is one unit, and you have 10,000 units per day that you can use with YouTube API. And there's other things that I'm doing as well with YouTube API, so I want to be careful about not using it too much. So I look at that like list. The playlist for all your likes is if you're using the API, the playlist is called LL, capital L, capital L, and then you can look at that, find any videos that you've liked, say today, or actually I have it looking at the videos that I've liked in the last 10 minutes, and it'll grab those videos and then add it to Karakeep, and then that other workflow triggers and grabs the transcript and summarizes it and puts that in Karakeep automatically, which is pretty amazing. I have a question. I haven't made the jump to Obsidian, but I've heard great things. Do you host yours on-prem or do you have a VPS? For Obsidian is a note-taking tool. It's a client-based tool. And so it's not something that you host somewhere else. You would just run it locally. That said, you can also sync, if you want to have the files synced from, say, this machine to that machine to my phone and to all the other places, then you need to have some sort of syncing solution. And some people will, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, some people will try to use iCloud, and that's always been problematic. Sometimes it works, and then all of a sudden files disappear. And so the Obsidian and probably one of the descriptions I've heard for using iCloud Sync is it's the greatest advertisement for buying sync from Obsidian, because Obsidian Sync, which costs like $4 a month, or $8 a month. Or if you joined really early on, like I did, then it's $4 for the current $8 a month plan. Anyway, grandfathered in. And so that will synchronize all the files. So that's what I'm using for sync, because I mean it's the only little bit I want to support Obsidian, so I feel fine with paying them $96 a month. Does it come to 96? No, $48 a month, something like that. 4 times 12, 24, 48. Yeah, so I pay $48 a month, or $48 a year for Obsidian Sync. Then there's also Live Sync, which will, and then you can host a Live Sync server, and then that will do the synchronization for you. But I thought about doing that, but I haven't done that. One thing I have done is, for making some automations easier, is that I have one Obsidian instance that's running on my NAS. So I've got a Ugreen NAS, and you can run Docker containers on there. And I've found the Docker container for running Obsidian. Well, on Linux, Obsidian is also a GUI-based app, so you need a GUI. And so this Docker container spins up X as well, and so you can run a headless graphical Obsidian and have everything there. And because I'm using Obsidian Sync, it will synchronize with everything else, and that way I can just add a file to my NAS and it shows up in Obsidian in all the places, which is pretty cool. But I really should write it down, because it's kind of complicated and I have to think it through every time. It's like, what have I done? And the problem with doing this is when something breaks, like, something broke. What do I do? Like, I had a problem where something broke this weekend. Actually, it broke about 2 weeks ago. So my home network is using, what's the brand? It's TP-Link Omada. And Omada is basically a complete copy, very obvious copy of Ubiquiti's, what is Ubiquiti's system called? Anyway, Ubiquiti's system. It is almost exactly the same. But the reason I went with Omada was that I bought it when we bought this house, which was kind of still in the middle of COVID, and Ubiquiti, everything was sold out everywhere for Ubiquiti, and I could actually get the TP-Link or the Omada stuff. So that's why I'm on Omada. But there's a controller, a piece of hardware that's a controller. You can also do it as a Docker container, but I opted for doing it as a piece of hardware. And for some reason, it went offline, and I could no longer log into it. It just wouldn't work. And since everything is connected to that container or to that controller, that meant I couldn't log into any of the other routers that are out throughout the house. So I've got 4 switches, mostly in one place, but there's a couple of, 2 in one place and 2 in other places, as well as 5 access points in the house. It's a pretty big house. And so I couldn't access any of them. So in order to access them, I had to reset the boxes, which meant everything was down, and I had to spend a lot of time. I think most of the time was spent trying to remember how to set this up for the first time, and I remembered that only after resetting it. I think there was another way I could have done it without resetting it, but I didn't remember that until after I reset it. So that was a problem. That would have been solved if I had written it down. Or it would have also been solved had I backed up my setup. Unify. Thank you. Unify. Yeah. Yeah, I would, if I didn't already have an investment in Omada, which works perfectly fine for my use case. If I didn't already have that investment, I'd probably switch over to Unify. But yeah. Yeah, I love going back to the YouTube. I love the fact that all I have to do, the reason why I wanted to do it through liking the video or adding it to a playlist is I could do all sorts of other things with plugins in Dia, which is the main browser I use. But the problem is those extensions, which are just Chrome extensions, aren't available on my phone. And so if I'm walking around and I see a video, I think, I really shouldn't be watching this passively. I want to take some notes on this video. In the YouTube app, I just choose add to playlist, which I could do in the YouTube UI. And within a minute, usually, I guess it's between, worst case is 1 minute, best case is, just a few seconds. I will see the new note fully summarized in Obsidian, within about a minute, which is amazing. Ubiquiti is pricey, but it's, yes. I don't know that it's great. I just see enough videos where it's like, I think that would be great. Get a Pixel. No, I don't want to downgrade to Android. No, I'm definitely a Mac ecosystem kind of person. I don't want to. The one Android device I have to look at every now and then is my mother's boyfriend's phone, and it's always a mess. I don't know what he does. He's 92 years old, so that's part of the reason why it's probably a mess. Not the Pixel phone, but the boyfriend. My mother is 87, 88. So it's weird to say boyfriend, girlfriend on that kind of age number. I went from pfSense to Ubiquiti and love it. pfSense. I don't think of that being a alternate of Ubiquiti. Is it? Okay. So I'm mostly Omada, and then the other, Pi-hole for DNS and DHCP. Grew up on Android. Yeah. Android came out, I don't know, I guess I was 20 when did Android first come out? Android history. Began in 2003 as a startup, and Google acquired it in 2005. First released in 2007, so that was really 2007. So I was nearly 40 years old when Android came out, and by that time I guess my first iPhone. I didn't start at the beginning of iPhone. When I was at Microsoft, I was purely Microsoft phone. So I had a little one from, God, who made that thing? I think it started with an A. I can't remember. AudioVox. This little great AudioVox phone, as well as a couple of phones from Nokia. Great devices. Small, perfect. And then, of course, going to the iPAQ from Compaq and a few others. But anyway, and then went to another company where we were all BlackBerry, and then when probably about halfway along there, that's when I bought my first Mac and iPhone. Yeah, and yeah, I've been that way ever since. Ubiquiti Cloud Gateway Max. Okay, cool. Nextel. Nextel had wasn't that the push to talk system? Which was definitely cool in the ads. I don't know of anyone that had it. The other thing that was neat at Microsoft, when I was on the Microsoft phone, or Microsoft, was it Microsoft Phone? Was that what it was called? Anyway, the Windows Phone. When you were in that ecosystem, so this would have been, I was at Microsoft from 99 to 2004. And for the last 3 years of that, or last 2 years of that time, I was on the road, actually out in the field, working for state and local government for Idaho, Alaska, Washington, and Oregon. And so I'd often be working from random Starbucks all around Olympia, Washington, and whatever the capital of Oregon is, and Idaho, not Coeur d'Alene, what was it, Boise, Idaho. And so I'd be in these different Starbucks, and being able to see, this is 2000, the year 2000, open up my laptop, get online, and see a little toast message pop up saying that somebody is calling my landline phone back in my office in Redmond. Actually, that was an interesting thing. I didn't have a fixed place to be. I would often work out of the Vizio building, which is right on the waterfront in Seattle. But then sometimes I'd work in Sammamish or Redmond. And so wherever I was, I'd sign in, and then my phone would come to me, my landline. But I could be on my laptop and see the little pop-up that says there's a phone call coming in on your office phone. It's from this person. Press this button, and if I press that button, it transfers that phone call while it's still not even connected to my phone. I mean, it's dialing, but that's it. Transfer it to my BlackBerry or to my Windows phone, actually, and then be able to answer it on my Windows phone. Magic that you could do that 25 years ago. So did I ever meet Gates or Jobs or Woz? So Jobs or Woz was Apple, so I never met them because I never worked for Apple. But Gates and Ballmer, who were at Microsoft, I met Bill, but Steve I never met in person, though there was so we've all seen the Monkey Boy video, the developers. So I was in the room for that talk. That was, pretty sure that happened at Safeco Field, which is called something else now, the baseball stadium. So we'd often, because Ballmer or some of the other execs owned the Mariners at the time, they could, and the stadium, they'd be able to have the company meeting there, and so we'd have the company meeting, and that's where he did the running back and forth, and off. One thing that's interesting in that video, is his shirt. He always wears the same shirt. It's a light blue shirt at the beginning of the talk, but by the end, because he's running around so much, it's dark blue at the end because it's just drenched in sweat. And he would be, so he drenched in sweat, but he's also large. He's a large guy, and and all that running around, he'd get exhausted, and he'd lose his voice. And his trick for losing his voice was basically punching his throat to kind of get his voice back, and then he'd be able to talk normally, and then it was kind of go off, and he'd start losing his voice again because he's really animated. But anyway, getting bigger and bigger, and so at Microsoft, you could join the local the gym that was across the street, which is mostly Microsoft people that go to it, called the Pro Club. And the Pro Club had this new program called 2020. And the first big exec to go through it was Ballmer. And he went from this very overweight person to a much fitter person. And so that was this amazing thing to watch. And so I sent him an email just saying, well, I'm joining 2020 now. Any tips for going through the program? And he wrote back, or at least I'm pretty sure it was Steve that wrote back saying gave me some tips and ideas for doing it. So 2020 was this program where they pair you up with a personal trainer, dietitian, psychologist, group sessions, psychologist or psychiatrist, I can't remember which one it was, and a few other doctors that are with you for like 8 or 12 weeks going through this program. And in that period, must have been long, it must have been more like 16 weeks. In that period, I went from 300 to 220 pounds. So I lost this massive amount of weight, which was amazing. And it was $8,000, which you only paid if you dropped out of the program. If you stayed in the program, it was free. It was covered by Microsoft, which was incredible. You leave the program because you had too many sodas one day or too many chocolates or whatever it was, you were kicked out of the program, and you had to pay up the $8,000, which was a pretty big incentive for staying with it. So that was my encounter with Ballmer. With Gates was a little bit different. I saw him. I had a one-on-one meeting with Gates. There were several times I was in the same room with Gates and Ballmer because I was originally hired to do Linux Compete. How can Microsoft destroy Linux? That was the goal. Now, of course, they cooperate and all, but at the time it was how do we destroy it? And since I had been mostly Linux bound or Linux focused for a long time before that, this was an interesting way of joining Microsoft. And so with all of the major groups inside of Microsoft, there would be every 6 months a executive review where all the top people in that org or in that group would be on one side of the room, and on the other side of the room were all the executives. And Ballmer and God, I can't remember the other names of the other execs were, like Brian Valentine and all these other folks that were all on one side. And then way in the corner, almost every time in the corner, was Bill. And Bill is just sitting there, rocking, sitting in his chair, rocking back and forth, looking down the whole time. And these presentations are going on. They're on the screen, massive screens. I'm sure I've talked about this before, but anyway, massive screens. And he's just rocking back and forth. And he just pops his head up, looks at the screen, and then goes back to, just listening the whole time, and then popping up, and then dropping down. And now these slides are incredibly dense. They are quadrants. Almost every one of them is a quadrant. Four sections. And each one of those quadrants has a very detailed chart. On a normal projector, you wouldn't be able to see the numbers because they're so small. 40 rows by 40 columns in each of these 4 quadrants. Massive slides. Painful to look at. Painful to put together. But they had these slides, and he'd be looking up and look down and rocking back and forth. And I remember at one point, like, he pops up. He's like, wait a second. I don't understand something. 4 slides ago, in quadrant 1, column 32, row 15, whatever, you had a number. And then 10 slides before that, in quadrant 3, row 22, column 56, you have this other number. I think those two numbers should be the same, but they were different. Can you explain that discrepancy? It's like, what? And you'd have to go back and try to look at the slides and see the two slides, like, huh. And the person would have to explain why they made the mistake of that. And that was so when you were presenting the executive reviews and Bill was in the room, you had to know what was on that slide. Luckily, I was never in the position where I was actually delivering, because with Linux Compete, I was one of the, I don't know, it was the fourth or fifth person hired at Microsoft to focus on that, but there were other people that were higher up that would actually be delivering the content. I would just be supplying some of the numbers. But so that was the first time I'd seen Bill. But the other time, actually, I don't know if that's the first. Yeah, it's probably the first time. The other time I'd seen Bill, more of a one-on-one situation, where no more than 3 feet away from each other for 30 seconds, for maybe 40 seconds. And a pretty traumatic event. So back in 2001, we were at a mini conference for education folks, for deans and presidents of universities but also K-12, I think, was also in the room. So a kind of general education group. And on stage were Bill Gates and Mike Coleman. Mike Coleman was product manager, one of the product managers in Windows. And he went on to be a product manager at Docker. He might still be at Docker. I'm not sure. And actually, I think he changed. Anyway, so the two of them are on stage, and they're demonstrating, in Windows XP, one of the neat things about XP was you could plug in most common cameras, and XP would recognize that camera right away. And it just appeared as a drive, and you could download your photos, which was mind-blowing at the time. This was such an amazing feature that that feature on its own probably sold so many copies of Windows XP. So he plugged in this device, and as he plugged it in, everything started shaking. The whole room was shaking. Now, obviously, it wasn't plugging in this camera, but it happened to sync in time with this happening. And I was thinking, oh my God, that's a big truck driving by outside. Now, probably, I don't think any big truck could do this, because this was at the Westin. And the Westin is the two round towers in downtown Seattle. If you've ever seen Frasier, Frasier, the TV series takes place mostly in the apartment in one of those, or condo, in one of those towers. And I think the lower floors are the Westin Hotel. So, if you go down below that, I don't know if it's still the case, but for a long time, that's the main data center for Seattle. If you had any compute that needed to be online, you were going to be in the underground area underneath those two towers. So no truck is going to shake this the way this building is shaking. But what turned out to be is the Nisqually earthquake. So there was an earthquake in 2001, and it shakes everything. And so I knew, as a pretty recent transplant from California, I need to go for a door frame. So I stand in a door frame, and I'm standing there, and within 4 seconds, I'm joined by Bill Gates. So it's me and Bill for the earthquake. This is a pretty traumatic event. Me and Bill standing, looking. I'm looking down at him. He's looking up at me. We're both smiling. And I'm thinking, I just need to think of one good thing to say, one smart thing to say. And I will soar through the ranks. I will be his next technical assistant. I've known people who have been that in that role. I went to much later on in my career at Microsoft, the salesperson I was tasked or assigned to, Peg, she got married to Brett Arsenault, who started out his time at Microsoft as Bill's personal technical assistant. So, and he's a pretty cool guy. So I thought, I'm going to be that kind of person. I heard about that kind of person. I want to be that person. So I just have to think of one smart thing to say. That's it. And I'm going to soar through the ranks. So I'm thinking, what can I say? What can I say? What can I say? And all I could think of was, wow, this is cool. So if I was in another traumatic event and I'm with somebody and that other person says, wow, this is cool, all I'm going to think is, who the hell hired this idiot? And what is he doing next to me? Which I'm sure Bill thought as well. So that was my encounter with Bill. Now, after the earthquake was done, we went, all the staff members were kind of crowded around the one computer that was online in the building, or in that conference room. And we were all looking to find out what's going on. We let Bill drive. So Bill was going to all the different news sites, CNN and all the other news organizations. Back when CNN had showed like real news, and all the news places, and looking for New York Times. So all the newspapers, all the local resources, Seattle Post-Intelligencer when it still existed. All the things, and looking for any details. And it was like an hour before any news of the earthquake showed up anywhere. But the entire time he's rattling off facts about natural disasters over the last few hundred years, and how many people were killed, and what kind of damage was done, and how this felt compared to other things he'd read about. And he just knows this stuff off the top of his head. He didn't do a whole bunch of research about natural disasters thinking, oh, today there's going to be a natural disaster, I better bone up on my natural disasterness. No, he just knows this stuff, which was pretty cool. And so that's the long answer to the question. Did I ever meet Gates? Yes. And I think I've probably told that story a few times on here before. What is your go-to place for tech news these days? Where do I go? So I have an email that gets generated every Friday, Monday, and Tuesday, which was in preparation for this stream that I do with Ryan. It's an email that I don't actually look at, which I don't know why I set it up, but that goes through. I use N8N to look at Perplexity. I do a search on Searching, SearchNG, which I self-host. It finds all the news stories. It hands that off to a model and generates a summary of most of those items, and then that sends me an email, every day at 2:00 or so. Every Fridays, Monday, and Tuesday, in preparation for this call. So that's one thing I do. I don't actually look at it. One thing I've been using pretty recently is, what's it called? Morning Brew. It's an email list. I don't think they have a pay version, but I use that. I read through that most mornings. That's been pretty good. I'll sometimes look at I have Perplexity Pro. I didn't pay for Perplexity Pro. There's so many emails that you get from new newsletters, and most of them I ignore. But for some reason, one day I looked at the email newsletter that I was getting from Kevin Rose, he was the other guy, or the one you actually knew of on Dig Nation podcast. And so he sends out this newsletter. I read it one day, and he says, I'm an investor in this new company called Perplexity. If you click this link, you'll get a free copy of, or free license to Pro for I don't know if it's 1 year or 2 years or I don't know how long it's going to be. But it's going to be a free subscription. It's like, great. So I signed up. So I used Perplexity Pro because I have this free copy from Kevin Rose. And so sometimes I'll look at news there. Where else do I get news? I'll because I bought an iPhone recently, I get Apple News. Actually, not an iPhone, but I did this. No, this is an old one. But I got something from Apple. What I got? Can't remember what my last Apple. I bought a phone for my mother. So I get an extra 6 months of Apple News. We subscribe to the New York Times, so I get news from there. But that's best, not tech news. Where's the best tech news that I get? I just RSS feeds. RSS, and I subscribe to, in my RSS reader, which is what I'm using right now, InnoReader, and that gets a lot of news items. I don't know what else. Where else do I get news items from? I don't know. YouTube. YouTube is probably my biggest source. Let's see. What else is going on? Best chat ever. Get me going on one story. I'll keep going for a while. Yeah, that earthquake. So there's still some recovery going on from that earthquake. So the earthquake happened in 2001. Within one of the big damaged areas was the Alaska Viaduct. So if you're in downtown Seattle, there's this elevated highway, or it was this elevated highway that goes right along the waterfront from near Pioneer Square all the way past the goes past Pike Place, past the art museum area, and so but that when it was shaking, it was already pretty old when the earthquake happened, and then the earthquake happened and it cracked a few of the support posts. They retrofitted it so that it would stay up with a lot of cars going on it. But then they tore it down. Well, first off, they dug a tunnel underneath the waterfront, which was a huge effort. The excavator got stuck at some point. They had to pull it out, and because they put it in, I think somebody. What was the story there with it breaking? They just spent huge millions and millions of dollars on this thing that would turn a big drill that goes through the ground, and I think somebody went forward when they shouldn't have, and so they put it in reverse, and it went backwards. Except there is no reverse, or there's a reverse, but you're never supposed to use it, and it broke. Millions of dollars, and then you've got this thing that's bigger than a. I don't know how wide that tunnel is. It must be 4 cars wide. That kind of big circle. They have to drag it out and then replace it. That took years. But eventually they built this tunnel. I still haven't gone through the tunnel. Never have a reason to. And then tore down the Alaskan Viaduct. And there's still a few tweaks that need to happen along that route. They're opening up more and more. But I think there's still some construction cones and stuff in some places. It's all messed up for me. I see it whenever I go into Seattle because I live on Bainbridge Island and I have to take a ferry from Bainbridge Island to downtown Seattle if I want to go into Seattle. And the number of times I've actually gone into Seattle, other than for going to the airport, is probably 7, 8 times in the last 5 years. So I don't do it often, but so I definitely see that. And taxis have to park in different places every time. So eventually this will all get sorted. But it's still because of the earthquake 24 years ago. What's your favorite Linux distro? I don't know if I have a favorite. My first So I started using Linux in 91, which is a long time before most people started using Linux. That was the second email that, not email, but second Usenet post that Linus Torvalds sent out saying, hey, I'm, working on this toy project. Anybody want to try it out? And I downloaded that, and it was super rough. I was able to get it running on my, I think at the time I had a Gateway 2000 3D6 PC, and got that running on there. Later on, SLS or LSL, and something like that was the early distro that I used for a long time. Really, I think it might have been the first distro. And Ubuntu has served me well. If I need a Linux distro, in fact, I just needed one. Oh, to set up my Omada controller, I think is running on a Ubuntu box, Ubuntu virtual machine on Proxmox. It's just the one I go to more often. It's the cool ones where the cool kids use, I think, is Arch, but Arch always has problems. So I just wanted something that worked rather than a challenge. So that rules out Arch. I don't know. I for a long time I was super excited about not a Linux distro, but I love BOS. But for what's another one System 76. Their distro is pretty cool. Pop! OS, I think it's called, is really neat. But I don't know if I get excited about Linux. I don't. There was a time when everyone felt very different because we were still dealing with the GNOME versus, what was the other thing? There's KDE versus GNOME versus, yeah, I guess it was GNOME. Had the kind of really funky UI. Kind of almost like a if Kai Kraus was going to build a Linux distro, it was that kind of thing. Kai Kraus did a plugin for Adobe Photoshop called Kai's Power Tools. I'm a big fan of Zorin. Okay, see, I've never even heard of Zorin. Zorin OS is the alternative to Windows and Macs. Yeah, whatever. Make your computer better. Cool. And I can't use any of these as kind of a main distro because of the video creation being like the main thing I do and enjoy doing. And so that really, because I choose to use Final Cut Pro, that's a Mac only thing. So, and there's nothing else comes close to it. So, in my opinion. Recently we're dealing with beliefs versus facts. I can't say factually it is the best thing of the tool of the options, but it is my opinion or my belief that it is the best thing for me. Final Cut. Yeah, if I were, I can't think of the last time I've set up a Linux box with a desktop. It's been, the last one was probably Pop! OS, and it's been at least 5 years since I've used Pop! OS because I just don't ever install a desktop for any Linux. So probably not the best answer for the question of what's my favorite distro. I don't even know where I'd go to look for Linux distro. Is it like distro or something? Linux blog, okay. Wasn't there like a distro website? DistroWatch, that was it. It still looks the same. They have not updated the look of DistroWatch ever. Except I thought it was green before. So, page hit ranking. So in the last 6 months, the more popular page on DistroWatch is CachyOS by like double over Mint. I've never heard of CachyOS. I assume that's how it's Cachy or Catchy. Distribution based on Arch Linux. So, what is my daily driver? My daily driver, so I've got right here, I'm in my kind of studio. But the studio is kind of a bit of a stretch calling it a studio, but this is where I record all the videos. It is a room that is 6.5 feet wide by about 13 feet long by about, I'm hitting the roof. I think it's about 7 feet tall, 7.5 feet tall. So in this room, I have a iMac. What iMac is this? Oh, this is an M1 iMac. It was a base model, so 8 gigs. About this Mac, 8 gig M1 base storage, and that's been the one that I stream from. It's one that every video is made on. Every video is recorded on. Actually, I don't do any recording the streaming is done using Ecamm Live. Most of the recording actually for videos, I record to a little monitor recorder called the Atomos Ninja. And that records to a SSD. And when I'm done, I yank out the SSD, go upstairs to my other office, which is it's a little bit bigger than this, about the same length, but about 8 or 9 feet, but with windows that actually open. I mean, these windows open. I haven't opened them in a while. Let's see what's outside. Looks like a nice day. Blue skies. I should take my dog for a walk. But anyway, let's close those windows. So up there, that's where I have my M1 Max MacBook Pro with 64 gigs of RAM. That was the work machine I got from Olama when I was working there. And when we left, I was able to keep my laptop. And up there is also a 2011 Mac Mini, which is running Proxmox and a bunch of VMs on there, as well as some other cheap box that I got that is also running Proxmox with some other VMs, including Home Assistant and some other stuff. And then my main phone is a iPhone, Apple Watch. I'm in the Apple ecosystem completely. And then the other main system that I use all the time, I mean, the Proxmox boxes, Home Assistant is probably the one that gets used most often. What else is on there that gets used? I can't even think of what is on there. Pi-hole I have on a dedicated Raspberry Pi that is next to all the routers and stuff, all the switches. Where all the kind of the networking closet where all the cables come into. So I've got 2 24-port switches up there, which are mostly fully used. And what else is there? I guess that's it. Oh, the other system is up in the cloud. I've got a two instances on Hostinger. One is kind of the main production system, which is my production version of production. My main system that I actually use for SearchNG and Home Assistant, not Home Assistant, N8N, and what else is on there? Karakeep, some other tools, and then a copy of that I destroy and recreate all the time, which I actually use for videos. Want to love Apple, but I can't. I don't know. I switched to Apple, as I say, probably about. So it would have been after leaving Microsoft, joining OpenText. Probably halfway through my time in OpenText, I switched over to Apple part-time and then full-time. It took me the transition from Windows to Mac to be, getting to the point where I feel as comfortable on Apple as I did on Mac, Apple as I did on Windows. Probably, 2 years, because I was I was the kind of person that we'd often have different conferences at Microsoft, for wherever we were going. We'd have these education as well as state and local government conferences, and I'd often be the person that goes in the Ask the Experts booth. I would be one of the experts, and one of the other experts that we had often before he worked at Microsoft was a guy named Scott Hanselman. So me and Scott would do the answer all the questions. That was when he was still at Carillion, which is a payment processor based in Portland. So me and Scott would do all sorts of questions. So that's the kind of person I was on Windows, and then I switched to Mac, and getting to that level took a long time. Do you prefer your local server or VPS? It depends. For things that I need to be up all the time, I don't need anything. I don't actually do anything, so I don't need anything. I like to have things that are running all the time, and I do that on Hostinger up in the cloud because we bought a house 5 years ago on Bainbridge Island. Bainbridge Island is, from our bedroom, I can see downtown Seattle. So we're close enough that I can see a big city, but we're far enough away that, putting a wire from Puget Sound, from over Puget Sound, I think at some points it's 700 feet deep there, so they're not going to just string a wire. I guess they could string a cable across, but it's probably cheaper to go through Kitsap County. But it's a long way. Yes, they have fast internet in Kitsap as well, but this is most cables on the island. Most phone cables as well as data cables are suspended on telephone poles, and this is an area that has a lot of high winds. Sometimes, especially winter storms are high winds, and a lot of really, really big trees. And really, really big trees with really big branches and high winds means that trees and branches come down and take down the phone line or the internet line. And so there are definitely been, we've had 4-day stretches where we've had no power, or even worse, no internet. I can deal with no power. I got UPSs everywhere, but and a generator right outside this window. So as soon as the power goes out, generator kicks on, and now we've got this super loud generator going for the next 4 days. So that's super annoying. So I want stuff to be online, so it needs to be somewhere else, not here. And yeah, I guess I could also have and I probably should also have Starlink as a slower backup, but I don't need to pay that. I mean, yeah, I could have subscriptions to all the services, but I don't. So I keep those types of things running up in the cloud just because I want them online. Now, and also, sometimes if I put it on my MacBook Pro, I close that up sometimes, take it on the ferry, I'm offline. I still want to be able to trigger workflows from my phone wherever I am. So it needs to be somewhere else, not something here. That was a long answer. I got to work at coming up with short answers. Um, yeah, Corellian, yep. Tech, his house is our Graceland. Open outages for sure. Central Maryland, so I'm spoiled with infra here. So why with data outages, your cloud host often makes sense. Yep. Yeah, yeah. The house is interesting. We we bought the house that we love. I mean, we love this house. We haven't really had to do much at all with it. It was built maybe 2 years before we moved in, and the people who lived here, moved because I think it was they built it. They started building it before COVID, finished mid COVID, and then the person who it was a couple and their daughter. He was after as COVID was closing out, or towards the end of COVID, his job started going up again, and he had to travel a lot to Los Angeles. And he was traveling before, but I guess he got to a point in his career where he was traveling more and more often. And so, having this house in this sort of remote place, you have to drive 10 minutes to the ferry, wait for a ferry. Maybe it happens, maybe you get on the ferry in 5 minutes, or maybe it's an hour, or maybe if you're driving on, you might be 3 or 4 hours before you can take the ferry. 45-minute ferry over to Seattle, and then 30-minute drive down to the airport means it's a long commute to the airport if you're going. And he was going every week. He directed commercials for all the hotels.com, Captain Obvious. I think he was the director for all of those commercials, as well as a lot of Toyota and Volkswagen commercials. So he used to do that trip a lot. But this house, so we bought the house, which is amazing. We were at a special time in our lives to be able to do it, and it was spectacular. But it's got, there are iPads that are on the wall that you can use to control all the lighting and shades in the house. It's just super cool stuff. Use Cloudflare tunnels for everything. I don't use Cloudflare tunnels. I used it early on, and it was flaky at best. So I don't use Cloudflare tunnels. I'm assuming they, maybe it was the first few months of it existing, and then they fixed all those bugs. But I had already found another solution since then. So I don't use Cloudflare tunnels. Instead, I use Cloudflare tunnel, I assume, is basically allowing you to connect to other hosts, but stay, a private connection kind of thing. So I use Tailscale. So everything is on my private Tailnet for me and my wife. And then if I want other people to access like an image server, I can invite their Tailscale account. It's super easy to sign up for a Tailscale account. I can invite other people's Tailscale accounts to that one resource, and that way I can expose little bits and pieces. And then there are some servers that aren't on, it could be on the same machine, but that has more public access. Cloudflare free tier is amazing. I do pay $5 a month to Cloudflare for um, some of the compute stuff that I use for a link shortener. And there's some other things I use there for some of the serverless stuff. But Portland and Vancouver a ton, but never Seattle. We just went Portland, Vancouver. You said, I assume that means Vancouver, Washington, which is like the suburb of Portland, not Vancouver, BC. Or do you mean Portland and Vancouver, but not Seattle in the middle? I don't know. Because Vancouver, BC is very different from Vancouver, Oregon, or Vancouver, Washington. My wife and I were just in Vancouver, BC, 2 weeks ago? Yeah, I think 2 weeks ago. It was gorgeous. Always want to visit. Well, if you're ever in Seattle, come on by to Bainbridge Island. I'll host you for coffee or something. Also like the long answers, learning about you from a local. Wouldn't know this otherwise. He's done some funny stuff. Tailscale versus Twingate. Have you tried both? I have not tried Twingate. So that's my answer. I haven't tried it. I tried Tailscale and it's like, oh my god, this is amazing. I think I started using Tailscale at when I was still at, so I joined a company. I was at a company called a tiny startup. Probably 12, 13 years ago, I joined this tiny startup, 30 people. 30 people when I started. Nobody had ever heard of them. Called Datadog, and I left there 8 years later. We had gone to 5,000 people. We had gone public, IPO'd on NASDAQ, being in Times Square and seeing every sign in the entire Times Square lit up with the Datadog logo was amazing. Life-changing. Life-changing. And I left there to join a company called Infra, by two guys that created a tool called Kitematic, which was the first UI for Docker, and we were doing role-based access control for Kubernetes, and we pivoted to KeyPair, which was SSH tool management, and then pivoted again very quickly to build a tool called Olama, and I was there for a little while and then left, and I've been doing YouTube for the last 2 years. So I've done some funny stuff, yeah. But even better than let's see, after Microsoft, but before Datadog, well, there were a couple of startups just before Datadog, but before that, I worked for OpenText, based in Amsterdam. So the OpenText was based in Kitchener, in Canada, which is, the other big company there is, or was, BlackBerry. So BlackBerry and OpenText were the two big private companies. or computer or tech companies, so that was based in Canada, but I was based in their European office in Amsterdam. So I lived in Amsterdam for about 10 years, and that was amazing. Oh my god, that was amazing. Coffee's good. Hey, so it's been about an hour and a half. I was going to come on here for like 10 minutes, and I've been here for an hour and a half. I think I'm going to go. I need to finish up some things. What do I need to finish up? Oh, I need to finish up that automation and create a video about it. Oh, God, I got to get a clip for this wire. I don't even know why I'm wearing this. I'm not talking to anyone. I don't need that. So I do that for when I talk to Ryan, so I can hear him, but I'm not talking to Ryan. How I found your YouTube channel. I'm going to look over your videos for giggles, see if I can recall. Yeah, so I do a lot of stuff on, originally, the YouTube channel was about using writebacks. So my first video, I think it might still be on here, was I created this video about sending and receiving faxes in Outlook. That was made 18 years ago. And then, so I was doing a little bit of Outlook and WriteFact stuff, all sorts of other things for when I was working at OpenText. And then I didn't really do much for a while, and then I made this video on a RAV-Power travel router, which was amazing. It was basically a little battery, but you could also hook up a SD card to it or an external drive, USB drive, and then you could do all sorts of things. So I made a few videos about that, and that blew up my channel. I went from probably 20 subscribers to 4,000, which was enough to get monetized. And then I didn't really do much. I did a few Datadog things here and there, or a few other videos. Keep wanting to do more, but never really having the time because Datadog was a lot of hours. And then when I left Ollama, I went all in on YouTube and started making videos, mostly focused on Ollama, and then gradually about automation and N8N and a few other things. So that's so you might have seen me about, I guess more recently it's been some Docker stuff, some Karakeep and N8N and what else? SearchNG and all sorts of things. Well, thank you all for being here. Take the dog for a walk. Yeah, I should. It's nice. It's actually not too cold, but it's nice. I should go outside. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for being here, and I'm going to sign off. Bye.